Hey guys, how you all doing? In this video I wanted to emphasise just how ridiculous it seems, well, to me anyway, that another killer killed Mary Ann Nichols on 31st of August 1888 other than Charles Lechmere. Okay? Now, recently another channel specialising in Jack the Ripper suspect Charles Lechmere has come to my and everyone else's attention, everyone else who is interested in Charles Lechmere as a suspect, the brilliant Inspector Aberline channel. Okay? Now, what this channel's creator has done is emphasise in great detail the condition and movements of Mary Ann Nichols' body at a time when she was butchered around her abdominal area and her head was practically severed from her body. In his video Murder in Whitechapel episode 3, The Crown vs Lechmere, he describes the body of Mary Ann Nichols as observed by Robert Paul. I mean, I've done a video similar, but you know, this thing about agonal breathing like is what this video is about. The second witness he was actually, you know, if Lechmere was just a witness, and Robert Paul, you could say, is a second witness. He was encouraged to investigate Lechmere's find by Lechmere himself. He mentions agonal breathing. Now, what causes agonal breathing? Agonal breathing can be caused by anything that cuts off the blood supply to the brain. Your brain gets oxygen from the cells in your blood. Now, I've read that what the symptoms are of agonal breathing. They describe it as barely breathing, occasional breathing, problem breathing, irregular breathing, heavy breathing, laboured breathing, sighing, noisy breathing, gurgling, moaning, groaning, snorting. You know? Now, I think, in my opinion, Robert Paul was actually witnessing agonal breathing because of Nichols being both strangled and then practically being decapitated. You also have to consider the fact that no blood was observed at the moment Robert Paul was checking for signs of life. The agonal breathing he must have been witnessing is a strong indication to the regular passerby, I'm sure, that something is stirring, and is the major reason why Paul wanted to prop her up. Remember, Lechmere wasn't exactly keen on propping up, was he? You know? Now, on another note, I scour the land of YouTube for Ripper content very frequently, and I'm very disappointed when I see sensationalist Jack the Ripper videos repeating the same old script. Sickert, Kosminski, Chapman, Druitt, etc. Especially Montague John Druitt, you know? He seems to be overpopular, and God knows why. You know, I've said it before. How the hell did one of these killers leave Nicholl in the conditions as observed by Paul and Lechmere, and silently got away while leaving her looking passed out and drunk, even though he butchered her so badly? You know, this is something people don't seem to pick up on. So I want to emphasize this again. You have to look at the way Robert Paul's observing the dead body of Polly Nichols. He's seen some kind of stirring in the body, as I've described earlier on, and the reasons why. Right? And people are still going on. Oh, was it Kosminski? Was it Sickert? Was it Chapman who murdered his victims by basically poisoning them? He poisoned his wives. And Druitt, he was playing cricket, I believe, at the time. I don't know the full details on that one. You know, she was butchered really badly, right? But the condition of her body, you've got to understand. How the hell could you leave her looking like she was found after, you know, taking the trouble to cut her open and then slash her throat? You know, it just doesn't go. It doesn't sit right well with me at all. You know, I've done this kind of thing in videos before. I've gone into it more in other videos. Check out the rest of my Jack the Ripper content. Also, AI voices are a definite no-no to me. I'd love also to know the reasons why you get the same old no-content YouTubers denying the extremely possibility of Lechmere's guilt. You know, it's almost like Ted Bundy's defence lawyer, for instance, saying he accidentally killed those women. Oh my God. I've always thought that when you see some negative comments, it isn't always just because they disagree, which is a rarity, I would say. More like there's an ulterior motive of some sort, you know. I look at the Ripper tours and see what a lucrative business it is, you know. You mentioned what has to be the most logical suspect, in my opinion, Charles Lechmere, and all the shit hits the fan, so to speak. Anyway, back to this whole agonal breathing thing, you know. To suggest another killer is an absolute fantasy in my opinion, because if no blood was on display, then how was that possible when Paul arrived on the scene? You know, after Lechmere's discovery of the useful tarpaulin and Jack the Ripper running off and making sure she was decent and all her wounds covered up. What a considerate killer, you know? It just seems very, very remote. Even detectives and a Queen's barrister have said what I'm saying now back in 2014. You know, James Scobie, the barrister, and Andy Griffith, the detective. In Krista Holmgren's brilliant documentary, Jack the Ripper, The Missing Evidence. If you've not seen that, you know, you don't know what you're missing. It's a really good documentary. And the narration by Stephen McIntosh is unbelievably good, you know. Anyway, it all boils down for me to blood flow. Body language, that's of the killer. The actions of Polly's body as observed by Robert Paul. In other words, a body was at the stage where it was practically cut off from the control centre, if you know what I mean. Nerve impulses and bodily functions abruptly interrupted by being disconnected from the brain and all the vital arteries. Basically, is what I am convinced is what Robert Paul was really witnessing. The slash throat, I'm convinced, was to ensure complete silence and to make absolutely sure Lechmere could do and say whatever he liked. I only wish that he had more medical knowledge and better attitude back then, because he seemed convinced that an ordinary working class man could not be capable of such a crime, you know. You know, they could have solved it there and then. He's there, the suspect number one, at the actual murder scene. The only suspect in all the Jack the Ripper suspects you can say was at one of the crimes, for definite. Anyway, let's go back to the list of agonal breathing. If you look through here, I'll say that the barely breathing and laboured breathing seems to be, in my opinion, what Robert Paul witnessed. A kind of reaction to severe head and neck trauma. And she must have been completely dead at that point. There's one friend I have, incidentally, who takes interest in my Jack the Ripper obsession, because everybody just walks away. Everybody else. And he told me a story about a soldier his father witnessed being decapitated on the battlefield. I mean, that must have been one hell of a horrendous sight. But he was still running next to him. A good few seconds after, which goes to show, basically, activity in the body after such a traumatic event. I think at this point it is blatantly obvious we have a devious, cold, calculated serial killer here. All the signs are there. Just watch the brilliant House of Lechmere and take in properly what he's saying. Now, I would like to take a moment to thank all my subscribers, and anybody who's come across this video, please click like and subscribe. You'd have to subscribe, but I mean, at least click like, because it really helps with the YouTube algorithm, right? You have to realise though what effort content creators make in videos like this, and I'm enjoying it anyway. All these animations you're seeing and the Unreal Engine 5 representation of Bucks Row, I've made it all myself, you know, from Quixel's Mega Scans. Now, if you don't know what they are, you'll have, you know, if you know about Unreal Engine, you know that basically they are 3D scans of real world objects, you know. Anyway, I've made it all myself, and you can see some of the work I've done in the House of Lechmere's videos as well, you know. And Inspector Abeline, if you're watching, feel free to use my work if you think it'll help as background video in any of your future projects. Now we have a final word from Edward Stone.
The man that we've always been looking for.